Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
For longer than I can remember, at least going back to 1990-91, Pakistan has been trying to privatize its disastrous flag carrier, such as it is Pakistan International Airlines. It's been called many other names, some as a joke, some may be well deserved. I'll come to that as we go along. However, multiple processes to try and sell it have failed. Now we know that for any country to privatize a PSU is always a challenge because there are unions, there is politics, and also whatever you do, whatever mechanism you set up, there will always be allegations that this was a sellout. You sold this away too cheap. Remember, Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government, they sold 11 PSUs and 20 plus hotels. It was all done under the watch of Arun Shourie, somebody of that integrity, and yet somehow or the other, some case comes in every now and then. In fact, one case had popped up in Jodhpur High Court some time back, and who knows, something might still be simmering. So privatizing public sector is always a tough job. India had its own struggles selling Air India as well. That process was started many times, failed, but finally it did happen. It was acquired by the Tata Group, by far the most respected conglomerate in India. They used to own Air India earlier. So that's also a legacy question. They used to own Air India earlier before the government privatized it. In fact, they are the ones who had founded it. So there was also that connection. That finally got done, although that also had many hiccups. There was a lot of lobbying, counter lobbying. In the last part of Atal Bihari Vajpayee's tenure, they were close to selling it to a consortium of Ratan Tata and Singapore Airlines. It was all done, barring final signatures on the dotted line, and yet because of lobbying, it was stopped. In that lobbying, many powerful people in the BJP were involved, but also a very powerful aviation company, at that point India's largest private aviation company, Jet Airways, was also involved. So this is a tough thing. However, what's happened in Pakistan is quite remarkable because this was the latest effort to sell it. This is because Pakistan is now particularly under pressure from IMF to privatize, to raise resources, because the money that's come to Pakistan, which has been like oxygen plus steroids to keep Pakistan afloat, with that conditionalities, with that insist that Pakistan get rid of a lot of its loss-making public sector, raise those resources and use those elsewhere. That is why this bidding took place, although there were many controversies, protests by the union, litigation, the union as usual went to court, etc., etc. However, what's happened now is quite remarkable. There were 6 bidders initially who had been shortlisted. 6 bidders have been shortlisted, but finally, how many bids came? Just one bid came. Just one bid. And this bid is for just 10 billion Pakistani rupees, or 1,000 crores of Pakistani rupees, which comes to about 302 crore. It's the equivalent of 302 crores in Indian rupees. That little for your flag carrier. Now, it's not as if the flag carrier or so-called flag carrier is in great shape. It has 34 aircraft only, of which 16 are not flying at this point. So only 18 aircraft are flying. It has had many problems with its crews. We will come to that as we go along. It has lost many of its routes. Pakistan's economy is not doing very well, so aviation is not doing very well. It's only when people have some surplus money that they fly. It's tough for Pakistanis to get visas to go to many countries. Visitors from not too many countries want to come to Pakistan. So all those challenges are there. And also multiple private airlines have also come in. They take away quite a bit of the traffic. So there is a name, title PIA, there is a brand, but it's a very run-down brand with a large number of staff who the new buyer will have to get rid of. Now, the important thing also is who is the loan buyer? Loan buyer, which is offering 1,000 crores, whereas the government's minimum bid price, Pakistan, in fact, took the lead in privatizing its PSUs way ahead of India. So when Nawaz Sharif came to power in 1990, he set up the Pakistani National Privatization Commission, and he said, I will sell all my PSUs and government banks as well, and he did quite a good job of it. But that National Privatization Commission of Pakistan, even now, 35 years later, after it was constituted, is struggling to sell PIA. So the only bidder that they have for 1,000 crore Pakistani rupees, equivalent of 302 crore Indian rupees or 36 million US dollars, whereas the minimum bidding price stated by the Privatization Commission was $306 million. This is less than 1/8 of the minimum bid price, but only one bidder. This one bidder also is dodgy. This is a company called Blue World City. Blue World City is a real estate company, and once again, look at the company's top management. It's quite evident that it's a company run by veterans, senior veterans of Pakistani Army, Major Generals, Brigadiers, like that. So, in fact, I will also share with you this tweet by Aisha Siddiqa, who's written, besides other things, she writes a column for us also. She's written a landmark book on Pakistani Army and its business enterprises. And she says in this tweet, has anyone checked where a real estate company got the money to bid for PIA? Meanwhile, a look at the top officials of the company indicates who's behind the purchase, which means the big boys, as they are called in Pakistan, the army is behind the purchase. However, single bid, such a low bid, it's very difficult. It's going to be very difficult for the National Privatization Commission to accept this. Now, the bidder, how it works in Pakistan is that the Privatization Commission will now take this bid. It will ask the bidder to up it to equal its minimum bid price. Even if the bidder does not come back equaling the minimum bidding price, they make another fresh offer. Then the Privatization Commission has to go to the federal cabinet, as the central cabinet is called in Pakistan, and they can take a decision. So will they do it? Will they risk doing it? I don't know. I don't think so, because nobody even knows how long this government will survive, because the center of gravity in Pakistani politics is not with this government. It's always, in one way, it's always in the GHQ, but it's also politically with Imran Khan, even if he is in jail. So what do the bidders say? The bidders say, and I quote from the bidders, we wish the government the best. If they do not accept our bid, and if they want to keep running this airline, good luck to them. The problem is why these bids are so low and so few bidders have come in, that one, they fear change in government, that who knows, aaj ye sarkar hai, kal koi sarkar nahi hai. Second, is there a sanctity of contracts in Pakistan? Is there a sanctity of sovereign contracts in Pakistan? Because Pakistan government has recently rejected or rescinded or terminated at least 6 power purchase agreements with private power producers, because sovereign power is sovereign power. You can do anything. If they use sovereign power in this case, why won't they do it else? Because they routinely use their powers to enforce the renegotiation of sovereign guaranteed contracts, and that worries everybody. That worries everybody. And also the bidders are concerned that the government is not washing its hands off PIA fully. It still wants to keep 40% of the shareholding with itself, which would mean government nominees on the board, which would mean government having power over special resolutions and things. I think company law is not very different in Pakistan than here, because many of these things are inherited, even if they keep on going through changes. So who would like to be in bed with the government as a 51% partner when the government has 40%? Because some shareholding of PIA already for some reason is in private hands. See some of the other comments on this. So there is a handle, Vantage Point in Pakistan, who says no one will be able to outbid them as in the former soldiers. They own the country anyway, whether they buy the organization or just capture it. Then Uzair Yunus, somebody I think the word of, he's an economist based in Washington, D.C., Pakistani origin, who says Air India was bought by Tata, a conglomerate with a stellar reputation, and track record of operating sophisticated industries. PIA, on the other hand, has received a single bid from a property developer with 200 plus FIRs against it. Once again, there is a Pakistani serial entrepreneur with a popular handle, Syed Ali Abbas Zaidi, who underlines the fact that RDA, which is Rawalpindi Development Authority, has declared this company, Bluebird, as illegal. So, given all of that history, can you still be selling this airline, national airline, at such a low price to this company? However, this airline is not without liabilities. In fact, this has more liabilities than assets. I told you the state of its aircraft. Of the 34, 16 are not flying; they are grounded. So that's a very small number of aircraft. It does own many routes, right? Also, it owns many properties. It owns two hotels in Paris. It has forever owned the Roosevelt Hotel in New York. In fact, every year during UNGA, UN General Assembly, the Pakistani delegation, Prime Minister used to stay there. I believe now this has become a shelter for homeless people. There is some bit of irony there given the state of PIA. Many of the liabilities the government has agreed to take over. For example, PIA's debt. PIA's debt is something like 60,000 crore Pakistani rupees. Now, how do you translate that into Indian rupees for ease of understanding? Just divide by 3. You will not get the answer to the last decimal point, but it will be thereabouts. That's why we said 1,000 crore Pakistani rupees is like 302 crore Indian rupees. So 60,000 crore Pakistani rupees is the debt of PIA, which Pakistan government has agreed to take. They've also agreed to take the pension liabilities of its retired employees. And then the new buyers also want the freedom to fire a bunch of employees or renegotiate their contracts. Some of that has been granted by the government, and yet doesn't look like this sale is going to fly, because once again I will share with you a tweet from Salman Akram Raza, a very fine lawyer in Pakistan, currently also aligned with PTI, Imran Khan's party. He says the failure of PIA privatization to generate a single credible bid tells us what investors think of a country where the rule of law has vanished. Now, that said, think about PIA. I've flown PIA many times when I used to travel to Pakistan often. Actually, it was not such a bad airline because it was one airline, domestic and international. It was the same staff. It had the culture of an international airline. So flying within Pakistan those days, PIA used to feel much better than Indian Airlines. It was punctual, it had clean aircraft, it had reasonable food, very well behaved staff, very good ground handling. At one point, I with my family even took a long flight from Washington, that's a connecting flight from Washington to New York, then on PIA on a flight that came New York, Damascus, Istanbul, Karachi, and then an overnight stay in Karachi and next day to Delhi. That's because that was the cheapest ticket that was available and we were traveling economy. It wasn't a bad airline. It was quite a friendly airline. Then it began to decline and decline and decline and decline. And many reasons came in for its decline over time, because any business that the government runs will ultimately turn into mud. So there was a period where two former air chiefs, two sort of iconic air chiefs of Pakistan, PIA's heyday was when two of Pakistan's most celebrated air chiefs, Air Marshal Noor Khan, who was the chief during the 65 war, and Air Marshal Asghar Khan, who's seen pretty much as the founder of modern Pakistani Air Force. They served as PIA chiefs. Then it worked all right. Also, there was no competition. And then it started going downhill. That downhill journey actually hit global headlines. 22nd of May 2020, you might remember this incident. An Airbus A320 aircraft of PIA crashed in Karachi. This was on way from Lahore to Karachi. It crashed and landing, and all 99 passengers, including 8-member crew, died. What had happened was, before that, the plane had made a belly landing attempt. In the belly landing failed. In that process, its engines got ripped. The plane again flew and was coming back. Both engines lost power and the plane crashed. That led to some questions on the quality of the pilot because the inquiry showed all kinds of failures, pilot not understanding what to do, pilot not doing the right things, pilots not even following the instructions given from the ground. That led to some rethink and inquiries. Flight was PK 303, and that is when it was discovered that a lot of the Pakistani pilots, a lot of the PIA pilots were flying with illegal licenses or fake licenses. Now, how do fake licenses work? And again, the question would be, if pilots have fake licenses, the odd one might crash, but how are the rest flying any which way, right? Why aren't all the planes crashing, and how are the planes able to take off anyway? So the story was a typical Pakistani story. They were going to training academies, they were completing their courses, but for their exams, they were not sitting for their exams. They were sending what we might call proxies to sit for their exams. So find somebody who's an expert pilot, pay the guy who sits in your place in the exam. But who gets the certificate? You get the certificate. So you've learned your basic flying, right? But you haven't passed your exams, and you get these certificates anyway, even though someone else might have sat in your place at these exams. And that's how this fake license scandal came out. In fact, it was then revealed or found out that almost 1/4 of PIA licenses, PIA pilots licenses were not genuine. On 24th of June 2020, Pakistan's Civil Aviation Minister then, Ghulam Sarwar Khan, he admitted that 262 of the 860 pilots in PIA had these fake licenses. Remember, they knew how to fly but had not passed their exams. Somebody else had sat for their exams. Now, a large number of these pilots were immediately grounded. On 30th of June that year, 2020, European Air Safety Agency banned PIA from flying into Europe for 6 months. Within a week, on 9th of July, the US, the UK also followed suit. They also banned PIA from flying into their countries. And then Vietnam and Malaysia, where quite a few Pakistani pilots were employed, they also grounded those pilots because doubts arose as to whether they had themselves sat for their exams for their certificates or somebody else had done the job for them. This is a blow that PIA has never recovered from. PIA actually has quite an interesting history because by 1945, where it became evident to Jinnah that Pakistan was coming into being, he figured that Pakistan will also need an airline. So he asked two well-known, respected Muslim businessmen to invest money and set up an airline. So these two were Mirza Ahmad Ispahani and Adamji Haji Dawood. Both families are still successful business groups in Pakistan, the Ispahani group and the Dawood group. So they invested this money to set up in Kolkata, or what used to be Calcutta, an airline called Orient Airways. Orient Airways it is, which became the nucleus for what became PIA later. PIA, however, became active only in 1955 because as Pakistan was formed, BOAC, as the British national carrier was called then, which is now British Airways, they were given the rights to fly in and out of Pakistan international. But serial crisis continued coming in because as the Pakistani establishment and society got caught up in terrorism, fundamentalism, state got more and more corrupt, the army got more and more involved in running of the state. That's how a lot of the talent left Pakistan and things went wrong. Now, what we saw with the pilots was the final nail in a way that killed PIA, but many things had happened earlier. I remember in early 80s, must have been 1983, 84, PIA was marked out by US Drug Enforcement Authority, DEA, for being a big source of smuggling of drugs, narcotics into America, narcotics from Afghanistan or Pak-Afghan border. And this story was featured by Indrajit Badwar, my former colleague, who then used to write a letter from Washington. He was based in Washington, and that column was headlined, "Great People to Get High With," because PIA's slogan is "Great People to Fly With." So PIA has had a checkered history. At moments, at junctures, it's been a fine, efficient airline as well, but it has by now destroyed almost all its value and its brand equity as well. And that's the reason it's attracting so little bidder interest in such a tiny price.